welcome to today's talk session. My name is Deidre Moss, and I am the host of Can We Talk? I'm an educator, motivator, and a talk connoisseur. In recognition of Women's International Day that is observed March 8, 2022, we dedicated this session to talk about Women's International Day and the women who have contributed to the development of our society, in particular, Bahamian society. So I'm excited that we've invited Marion Bethel to help us dissect this topic. So at this time, I would like to pass the virtual mic to her to have her introduce herself.
All right, so my name is Marion Bethel, and I'm really pleased to be here and saying thank you to Deidre Moss for inviting me on this International Women's Day, which is a very special day for women around the globe who are celebrating this day. And I've been very active in the women's movement in the Bahamas and in the region and internationally for a long time, long before Miss Moss was born, probably. so that's my interest and one of my interests, and I spend a lot of time working on women's rights and women's issues in the Bahamas, regionally and internationally. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and so glad to hear that you're focused on regional spheres, international spheres, because we love to look at issues and situations from those perspectives, not just locally, but regionally and internationally. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
And so we're excited to have you on board today because we know that you're knowledgeable about this topic. So can we talk Women's International Day?
Yes. Yes.
Great. So before we begin, if you just joined us, you're listening in, please share, like, view, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy our content. We want to continue to talk about topics that matter to our communities. So with that, I jump back to you, Ms. Bethel. Can you tell us about your background? Give us a little bit about your background.
So what would you like to know? You probably have to ask me specifics, but I work as an attorney. I've been working as an attorney since 1986. When I came home in 1986, I started working at the Attorney General's office, where I spent 10 years doing both criminal prosecutions and civil work in the civil courts. And when I left there, I joined my spouse in private practice, and I've been in private practice now since 1994, mostly in the area of civil law. In addition to that, I do, as I've said before, I work on women's human rights, trying to advance gender equality in the Bahamas, in the region, and internationally. That's one aspect. I also love creative writing. So I write short stories and poetry, and so that's another passion that I have. And my life is full. There's lots going on, and today is a great day to celebrate the journey that we've made as women in this country in particular, and regionally and internationally. Currently, I work. I shouldn't say work. Currently, I was elected to a United Nations human rights treaty body in Geneva. So I go to Geneva 3 times a year, Switzerland, where I sit on the CEDAW committee. CEDAW is the acronym for the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's a human rights treaty that advances women's human rights around the world. So I monitor, along with 22 other people, we monitor compliance of countries with this treaty. The Bahamas ratified this treaty in 1993, so it has obligations and responsibilities under this convention to advance women's human rights. So I think that's a bit about my background, Ms. Moss.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned that as women, we've come a long way, and I must agree with you. As women, we've come a long way in terms of attaining rights and different different issues that we've had to overcome, different challenges that we've had to overcome as women. So I want to thank you for sharing that and being one of the persons who has dedicated your basically life to, working on these issues. So thank you so much for sharing. And I want to jump to Women's International Day. This day is so pivotal. And so what does it mean? What does it mean to you?
So International Women's Day, historically, I'll just say that historically, it's been in place since about the early 1900s. And it was in the early 1900s that different countries, mostly, let's say the UK and Britain and other countries around the world, women were struggling for the right to vote, struggling for their own human rights in those Western countries, let's put it that way, because at that time, countries like the Bahamas were still a colony of Britain, France, wherever. So women in those countries, European countries and the United Kingdom and Canada, were working on women's human rights and trying to get the right to vote. So the early 1900s, like 1920 and 1918, saw women in Canada and Britain getting the right to vote. So there were celebrations of women's rights around that time on specific days. But what happened moving on from there, in 1975, the United Nations adopted and concretized March 8th as International Women's Day to celebrate the struggles and the advancements of women since the early 1900s. And so in 1975 in Mexico, there was an international, it was called International Year of Women. And they had a major conference, the UN had a major conference in Mexico City in 1975. And truth be told, Ms. Moss, the Bahamas had a delegation going to Mexico City in 1975 to celebrate this. So officially, the UN adopted March 8th as a celebration of International Women's Day to commemorate the social, political, economic, and cultural achievements that women have been fighting for a long time. So March 8th is a celebration of the advancements that we've made, and also to highlight the road ahead, because there's still a lot more to do. I hope that helps to answer it. So women around the world in different countries would be celebrating what their local women have achieved, and collaborate and in collaboration with the international community of women.
Thank you that you talk about the historical context of it, and then also mention that we still have a way to go. Even in 2022, we still have a ways to go, even within our own country. So thank you so much for sharing that. And as it pertains to the contributions of women, you talk about, this honoring women within their local, even though it's a broad umbrella in terms of honoring women as a whole, as a community.
Yes.
What about our local contributions?
Yes.
And can we talk about some of those contributions of women to Bahamian society? Right. Why is it so important for us to highlight their contributions?
Yes. So I think this is really, really critical. And because really the story of the Bahamas, or the history of the Bahamas, when we learn it in schools, if we do, it's usually we learn about the male leadership, what the men did, So and yes, I mean the men made major contributions, like Sir Randall Fox, Lyndon Pindling, Milo Butler, Arthur Folks. There are Cecil Wallace Whitfield, of course. But what you don't hear is the contribution that women have made to creating this modern country that we live in. And so when I came home in 1986, I really was wanting to change that narrative, and to see where it is that women have made significant contributions, and to really ask the question, why are we why is there such a low volume on it? Why are we erased really from history? And many of us don't know our history and the contribution of women. So that's why I did a lot of research, I should say, and eventually came up with a documentary called Womanish Ways, concerning the women's suffrage movement. Because one day I was reading an article, I think it was written by Kim Outen Stubbs, and she was talking about the women's suffrage movement in the Bahamas. Well, I was just blown away because I'd never heard of it. I didn't even know that it existed. I'd heard about and learned about all of the Western European and American suffrage movement, but I had no idea about it in the Bahamas. So I was fascinated, and that just changed when I learned more and learned even more. It just changed my total emotional and mental landscape. I can't tell you what a huge impact it had on me. So I wanted to, it's called, disrupting the narrative, changing the narrative, highlighting women's history. So we as women have been actively engaged in our own historical movement in this country, shoulder to shoulder with the men that I've just named. And so from 1942, post-World War II, in the Burma Road riots, we were there. Then there was the big strike of the general strike of 1958, which brought the country to a standstill under the leadership of Sir Randall Fox. Women were there, forefront, but you don't hear about it. Okay, women like Marion Stewart, for example. And then we were very much a part of getting the right to vote for women and for men, because there was a point where men couldn't vote either. And then we were very much a part of moving towards majority rule and independence. And so I wanted to highlight the work of the women in this period. And so I got down to business and did a lot of research and produced the documentary. And I'm so always willing to share it and talk about this period of our history that is so significant. Yeah.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for sharing that. And you talked about some, was it an article that impressed upon you?
Yes, it was a paper, a short paper by Kim Outen Stubbs on the women's suffrage movement in the Bahamas. Yes, Kim is a historian. She works at the archives now, not the archives, Monuments and History, Monuments, Museums. I think she's the director of the Monuments and Museum Institution here in the Bahamas. And she had written a historical paper on the women's suffrage movement, which fascinated me.
Mm.
Yes.
So before that, before that, you didn't really have that much, to go on as it pertains to women and their contribution.
Yeah, well, it was after reading that I then went to the different history books. One, The Faith That Moved the Mountain by Sir Randall Fox. Gail Saunders had written a number of history books. So I went looking through all of those.
Wow.
And all of the other ones I could get my hands on to really, Doris Johnson, for example, wrote a book called The Quiet Revolution. So I read that to see what else I could find about our contribution to these very important civil, social, and political movements during that period.
Wow, and thank you for sharing that article. That's definitely something, to look into. Kim Outen Stubbs.
I think I should have it somewhere in my archives.
Thank you for sharing. And so we talk a little bit about the suffrage movement and the contribution. So, and I know you talk about doing your work on the suffrage movement. So, what is the suffrage movement for persons who may not be as knowledgeable, and why was the suffrage movement an important part of the development of Bahamian society?
Okay, so the suffrage movement, suffrage is another word for suffrage is the right to vote. So the suffrage movement is the movement by persons, women, to get the right to vote for women. All right, women in the Bahamas voted for the first time in November of 1962. November of 1962, the very first time, all right? Prior to that, women were not allowed to vote. Women could not vote. So post-World War II, post-1942, there were several women, Mary Ingram, who was the founder of the women's suffrage movement, meaning the movement that was advocating for women to get the right to vote. She, along with Mabel Walker, whom you've heard of, I know, the school, Mabel Walker, right? They got together and they founded the women's suffrage movement. These women were just very, they were fierce. They were strong advocates. They believed that women should have the right to vote, that it was a civil right that we had, you know, and that it was not just that we could not vote. All right. So they formed a group called the Women's Suffrage Movement, which was the movement that fought for women to get the right to vote. So this was in the 40s. Okay, so 60 years ago or more. All right. And so they, along with Doris Johnson, I know you've heard of, yes, struggled for the better part of 15 years, from, let's say, 1944 right through to 1962, until we got the right to vote. All right. So we mustn't take it for, I mean, we as young people, well, I'm not a young person, but young women must not take for granted this right to vote, because these women had to fight for it. It wasn't given to us. All right. So during this period in the Bahamas, and you may have heard about this from your grandparents or great-grandparents, Ms. Moss, the 40s, 50s, and 60s were a time when we had a white minority government, the United Bahamian Party eventually. But the Bahamas was, there was racism. Black people were not, only reached a certain level of education. Health services were not of a high priority, education. So there was racial inequality, economic inequality during this period. So these women had to struggle not only for the right to vote, they were also struggling for improvement in our community, our society, our country, for everybody. All right, they wanted to see a better educational system. They wanted to see an expansion of our health services to adequately address the health needs of our people, but particularly education. So these women were socially conscious. They knew that we were not where we ought to be as a people, and the Black people in this country were not treated in a way that we ought to have been treated, and so they fought for all of those things. So when you look at the right to vote, you have to see it in that context. You know, there's a whole other things going on in the Bahamas too, in terms of the fight for racial equality. Sir Randall Fox had a very strong movement to fight for the rights of working people, labor rights. You know, so it was a time of great struggle and determination. And you may have heard of the contract. I don't know, maybe, right. So it was also this period where Bahamians left the Bahamas just after World War II to go and work on citrus farms and other places in the United States to help with the lack of workers there, and to send money back home. So it was quite a turbulent period, and one where the Bahamians of that period were looking for social change for the better.
Okay.
Yes. Up there.
Yes. No. I mean, that's awesome sharing that knowledge. So during this time, when you have these women coming together and working together to look at making progress toward women having the right to vote and having equal rights, at the same time, you had these different situations going on within the country, and so it was a challenge, maybe a challenging time.
Very challenging period, very challenging. And these are our great grandfathers, and grandmothers they rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
Because they could see the future, and they wanted a better future for you. They wanted a better future for me, because
yes.
if I look at my own family, my mother could only go to school until the age of 14, I think it was, and there was no more possibility after that. So that there were limitations for that generation in terms of educational achievement, economic achievement, and all that would mean for the quality of life. Okay, the Bahamas was a segregated community.
Yeah,
Black people lived in this part, white people lived in another part. So it was all of that they were struggling with, and they would have had you in mind, and their grandchildren in mind, great grandchildren in mind, because they really envisioned a place where you could vote at the age of 18.
Yeah.
You know, where the kinds of freedoms that you have right now, they couldn't dream of, you know, and the educational opportunities and all the other things that make your life the way it is right now were dreams for them, and for many of them in so many ways. So they had deep foresight and insight into what they thought should happen. And so they were working not only for themselves, but for future generations to come.
Yes. And I'm so glad you mentioned that these ladies had vision, and they saw, they had a vision for the future and what they wanted for our women coming behind them. And so I want to thank you for sharing that. It almost makes you feel guilty, you know, after hearing about the struggle, it makes you feel guilty. Yes. You know, not going out there and voting.
Exactly. So don't feel guilty. We don't want you to feel guilty. They wouldn't want you to feel guilty. They want you to build on what they have left behind. And they've left a tremendous legacy for us to build on and to move forward. So you have the right to vote at the age of 18. You have freedoms, the educational opportunities that you have. They want you to build on those for the betterment of our Bahamas, because we still have a long way to go.
Oh yeah.
You know? So you can replace any guilt that you will have. So I'm asking you not to feel guilty, but to do the kind of work that advances this community. So that means being informed. It means understanding the issues that are currently before us, and there are many. Yeah. Such as gender-based violence against women. Such as changing our constitution, which discriminates against women.
A host of other.
I could sit here for the next hour and just rattle them off.
It's a lot.
So the question for young people like yourself, Ms. Moss, is, you know, the work that you're doing with the social media, public education is very important. So I congratulate you for that, and
thank you.
And continue to do that kind of work of raising awareness and offering public education to people, because that is one of the central pieces of work that the women of the suffrage movement did in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, you know, they didn't have social media, obviously. But what they did was they got people together in church halls and school halls, and they told them, you know, educated them about democracy. What does democracy mean? What does it mean to vote? What does it mean to have your parliamentarians accountable to you as a citizen? So they did the same thing that you're doing in the context within which they had. So I'm really urging you and congratulating you on this public education, because that is critical for us to understand where we are, where we want to go as a people. Yes. And how do we see ourselves in the world? These are important issues.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's so important to really talk about those issues that matter. We have so many, as you mentioned, we have a host of issues. We have gender-based violence. We have all these things going on, abuse. We need more shelters for women who have children. There's so much different issues that we have in our country that we need to look at. So many things that are swept under the rug, but we need to talk about them. And so I want to thank you so much Thank you so much for mentioning that and talking about the fact that these women were revolutionary. They used what they had in their time at the time, and they used their resources to get the word out. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to get to you.
Okay.
I want to talk about you. Can you talk about any past, present, or future initiatives that you were involved with that highlight the contributions of those women? I know you did, but we want to talk about you.
Well, that I have done. I have, yes. So let me see. So in 1986, when I came home, as I was working at the Attorney General's office, I again, as I said to you, I really wanted to understand the history of women in this country. So I made that effort, and I've produced a documentary. I'm not sure if you've seen it, called The Womanish Ways. Have you seen it? The documentary.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it, and I know it's a very important documentary.
Okay, so let me get you a copy so that you can
please do. Thank you so much.
So that is one of the pieces of work that took several years to produce, to research and produce. So it's often played on ZNS around this time, or around November 26th, when women got the right to vote. So that's one piece of work that I've done. The other thing is that in 1986, I founded a women's group, actually, called DAWN, Developing Alternatives for Women Now, DAWN. And it was in this group that it was like an NGO, a non-government organization, and we did the public education around women's rights, women's human rights. We talked about all the issues that would have concerned women then. So, for example, we would have taken part in what was called then Take Back the Night marches. This was, in protesting the high incidence of sexual assault in the Bahamas, and asking for changes in the Sexual Offences Act, which took place in the early 1990s, because groups of women got together and demanded it. We worked on things like changing the law, the inheritance laws, where if a man died intestate without a will, his heir at law would have been his oldest son. So we felt that was discriminatory against women. So that law was changed in the about 2001. So we were working on issues again of social justice, and gender equality and rights for women. So the group that I founded, called DAWN, lasted about 10 years, from 1986 to 1996. And we did, the other thing that we did was we looked at child abuse. So we did a lot of work with young children in schools, where we showed them good touching, bad touching, because we really wanted to address this issue of incest in the Bahamas, and child abuse, period. So we did a lot of public education in the schools around that issue for children, to sensitize them to know what is appropriate behavior from adults or their own peers, in terms of the autonomy and integrity of their own physical bodies. So there were several things that we did during this period in this group. What else have I done? I've also worked on the abolishing the death penalty. I do not support the death penalty for murder, and so I was part of a group that was working to get rid of the death penalty. It's still on the books. We still have the death penalty, but it hasn't been used in almost 20 years now. I've also been part of, there are several movements that I've been part of, because I've been here a long time. When South Africa, prior to Mandela's release, I was part of a movement here in the Bahamas against the apartheid regime. So we had a movement that worked to free Nelson Mandela, and he was freed in 1994. So there's several movements like that I've been actively engaged in. And at this point in time, I'm also working with a group on reparations. I'm not sure if that is reparations for the Bahamas, in terms of the demanding from the colonial powers that had us as a colony, the UK in particular, for reparations for all the work that our enslaved ancestors did without any pay. So pay us back what you owe us. So I'm working currently with the reparations committee. So I think, I'm laying out a couple of things. I may miss something, but those are the things that I've been actively engaged in here for quite a while.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm sure it's more. I'm sure it's more. You talked about womanish ways.
Yes.
I love that name.
Yeah, me too. Because as a child growing up in my own family, and in the community in which I grew up on Nassau Street, right on top of the hill. And womanish was something terrible. In other words, if you told a girl, don't be womanish, and mothers still tell their girls, don't be womanish, you're too womanish.
Mm-hmm.
It was a put down. It was, stop trying to be, you're a child, stop trying to be an adult and do adult things. So I've often thought about that. And for me, I love the word, because I'm making it a word that's good, a good word, not the way my mother would have used it, but a word that is, a woman who's proud and assertive and dynamic and knows what she wants and goes out there and gets it and works for her community, and is and is her own person, so like they say, a badass woman. All right.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
You took the word back. You took it back.
Yes, I reclaimed it.
Yes.
And I've put it back out there in a positive way. So for me, the women of the women's suffrage movement were womanish.
Yeah.
They were womanish, and I'm so proud of them, and proud of any young girl who feels that she, has the right to be audacious, the right to do what you're doing right now.
Thank you.
The right to stand for parliament, the right to become prime minister, the right to say no to a man that is abusive. All those things are womanish, and so I've tried to bring up my two daughters in a way that they claim those things and are not afraid of being a woman, and not afraid of being an assertive, fierce woman. I think it's really important that women claim their power, and their space, and make the demands that are right, that are
absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with you, because sometimes we find ourselves in a space where we're not being treated fairly, where we're not having equal treatment. We don't receive equal pay. We have so many challenges to overcome. We have yet to have a female prime minister of this country. What are we waiting on?
I have no idea. And so I'm really proud of the 7 women the more than 7 who stood for election in this past election. I mean, an amazing number of women. Some 30 women stood for election as independents or with the different parties. And for the 7 that were appointed to the cabinet, that's just really, really wonderful. And so I celebrate all of that on this International Women's Day. And at the same time that we celebrate, we mark too and measure where we've come from, but also the road that lies ahead is still still a lot of work.
More. Yep.
Still work to do.
Still more work to do. We still need more representation for other groups as well. We need more representation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You talk about women Ashways,
Mm-hmm.
talk about Dawn.
Yes.
Talk about those reparations. I want some money. From my ancestors who worked hard. I want some reparations.
There you go. You know, so what we're doing around that. I mean, people always say, "Oh, is it going to come to me individually?" Well, that's not really the point. The point is for the United Kingdom to it would really go to the people as a whole. So so monies like that would be used to build institutions, you know, build our schools, build our health system, you know, which were deprived during the colonial period. And when we started with independence in 73, we were still at a disadvantage. So so many of our public institutions still need incredible infusion of money to improve the quality of life here. Our archives, for example, I mean, there are so many institutions that would benefit from the money that my ancestors and your ancestors didn't get paid for. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so as we talk about reparations, let's talk about satisfaction. Are you satisfied at the level by which we honor women in our society? I know you talked about we don't highlight women as much. How can we honor women who would have contributed in our society?
Well, I think one way to honor them is by making their stories known. I think that's, you know, keeping their stories alive whenever there's a time when men are being honored, that we do not forget, you know, that women have achieved and contributed as much. I mean, it's for me personally, it's keeping that history alive. And one of the other ways we can do it is we can institutionalize it in the school system. I mean, I don't know that this is taught in the schools. I know for a period when the documentary came out in 2013, some of the schools had it in their curriculum, but I don't know if they've sustained that. So one way to honor our maternal ancestors is to rewrite the history books and make sure that their story has been told. That to me is one way. I think that you know, the way we quote a lot of non-Bahamian people, you know, whenever we make speeches or do anything, we get these quotes, but they're from, you know, like Maya Angelou, for example, who's a phenomenal woman. No problem. I mean, you know, but what the point I'm trying to make is that there are documents where these same women have made incredible speeches. We can quote them. So how do you honor these women? You honor them by making sure their stories and that history is passed down from generation to generation. You know, that's one way. You know, and it's not that the women are looking for honors, but the way to repair the damage that's been done is to change. Let's get on with changing the Constitution. That's one way we can. I wouldn't call it honoring women, but that's one way that we would show that we have a commitment to women in this country. So I'm not sure where the honor part would come in. Other things is, you know, have more women run in your party. We need men as allies to champion women because we are competent, we have leadership skills. Yeah, so parties have their work to do, and I wouldn't call it honoring. I would call it just it's just needed and necessary. I mean, we can't sustain this country without the input of half of its population, which is missing in many levels of our governance. So I would talk less about honoring women, but making sure that we operate and function on an equal basis with men in this country is the best honor that I think you know you can
yes,
we can work on. So yeah, I hope I've sort of answered
Yeah,
the question.
definitely. Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied
With what?
with how we recognize women? Are you satisfied?
Um, no, because I don't think, recognizing women is, would involve that every institution. We're talking about the government, the church, offices, places of employment, all do their part.
Mm-hmm.
And so no, I'm not satisfied that we as a country have done enough. I mean, the parliament itself would reflect my dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's if we're 50% of the population or more, we should have 50% representation. That's my view, and I don't accept anything less. And I look forward to the day that actually comes into being. I mean, there are areas of our society where women are in great numbers. I mean, and so there is improvement. Sure, but we're still not where we need to be in this country. Yes.
Yes, we still have a ways to go.
Yeah.
We have a ways to go.
So the generations like yourself, your generation, yep, it's on your shoulders.
Oh boy.
Right. I know. It's onerous. It's a lot. But you've got a great platform, and you have a legacy of the suffrage movement. You have a legacy of hard work and accomplishment from that period to build on. So
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I feel confident, based on the shoulders that I stand on. Listen, I feel super confident.
Right.
Yeah.
So your grandmothers and great grandmothers, I'm sure they've worked hard to give you the kind of space and freedom that you have now to be who you are and do your work. So
thank you. We are strong women.
They're counting on you.
We are strong women here in the Bahamas. We are strong women. I may be straying a little bit, but one word that comes to mind is that word that they often use is biggity.
Right. Oh yeah, biggity. Right. Absolutely. Yes. I think today, in celebration of International Women's Day, I think one of the honors that's taking place is that I think the Office of the Prime Minister, Office of the Spouse of the Prime Minister, there. I don't know if you know the statue that the Johnson family, Oscar Johnson's family, contributed, of a woman with a baby. Yes, and I think they're at that monument earlier today.
Oh wow!
Laying a wreath. I'm sure it'll come on the news tonight.
Awesome.
So that is the way that the Office of the Spouse of the Prime Minister is honoring honoring women today. So
awesome.
So all of those kinds of ways are very, very important.
Yes.
There's no question about it,
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. We love to learn. And so I want to ask you if you have any additional comments as we wind down, if you would like to add anything else.
Yes. And so I think we've covered a lot of ground. It's and some of the areas of work that are still outstanding. The critical issue is one of the critical issues is the high incidence of gender-based violence against women.
Yes. Oh yeah.
What's happened in the past couple of weeks that is right up in our face, and how are we going to address that? How are we going to address this issue of rape within a marriage? Everybody's all up in arms about that and whether it should happen or not, and what so I think my final comments are really some of what I've said before, is that we celebrate where we have come to at this point in time, and we mark the road ahead and how we're going to address those very important issues. there are human rights violations still going on. Gender-based violence against women is a human rights violation. The LGBTQIA community is demanding their rights. Migrant workers in this country have rights. So there are many areas. The whole issue of the climate crisis and climate change. That is one of the central issues of this day in terms of the Bahamas perhaps being underwater in two or three generations. What are we going to do about that? How are we going to deal with this issue of climate crisis in our low-lying countries? It's a critical issue, and I think I know women around the world have been very much a part of the environment, preservation of the environment, and so I see young people here addressing that. So, we really have a lot of work to do, and I know that we are ready to do it. We have to make the commitment to keep on until we reach on other points of victory. So I would encourage you and encourage young people, young men and women, to really think about who we are and where we want to go and how we want to get there, and what your individual contributions can be and what you can do as a group, because it's going to take all of us to sustain this country. Everybody has a role to play, and everybody needs to lift up their voices so they can be heard and acknowledged. And it's not just every 5 years that we think about governance and all of that, but that we think about it more frequently in terms of things that need to be changed and improved upon, and I think it's really important for us as a people, and young people in particular, to really see the connection between the international world, the world outside of the Bahamas, and how that impacts us here, and vice versa. So, for example, what's happening in Ukraine has serious implications. I mean, Ukraine is thousands and thousands of miles away, an ocean away. But are we aware of how that war is going to affect our daily living? It's right here. The high gas prices, for example. So
yes, definitely something to think about.
The interconnectedness of all of us. We're not an island unto ourselves.
No,
we're part of this whole world community.
Yep.
So we have to know a lot about what's going on worldwide and our place in it, and what we can contribute to the world. And, so yes,
absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. We need to know our place in the world and how all of us are connected. We are connected in some way, and we are going to see the effects of these things happening with inflation and gas prices. We're going to see this has an impact on us. So we need to be concerned about what's going on in the world around us. And so thank you for mentioning that.
Yes. And our government has to be accountable to us for policies and positions that they take in the world. And so we have to raise our voices so that they can hear what we're thinking about what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's not just every 5 years.
No.
And then you sit back and, mean, the women of the women's suffrage movement talked about active citizenship, and active citizenship is citizenship that is, vigilant every day, because freedoms that you've won can be eroded if you're not careful and watching and holding that space and moving forward. So there's a lot of work for us to do, and I'm encouraged. I see young people like yourself really thinking and trying to envision ways of dealing with everyday life here in the Bahamas. And so I'm inspired, you know, and there are opportunities for us to do phenomenal things. Bahamians have everything that it takes to make this country a better place, and the region a better place, and the world.
Oh yeah.
So let's do it, you know.
Yes, let's do it.
Get out there and do it and make it happen.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm optimistic. I'm totally optimistic, and
so am I.
There's a lot of light around.
Yes. We have our challenges.
Yes.
But
like everybody else.
Like everybody else.
Like every other country in the world, right?
We have our challenges, but as you said, we should remain optimistic. This is our country, and you know, we got to fight for it if we want it.
That's right. That's right. Gotta fight for it if you want it.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for spending time with us today.
You're welcome. More than welcome.
And we welcome you back. You are our friend now. We've adopted you as our friend.
That's great. Wonderful. Okay. So I'd be happy to come back again. Just
welcome
let
you
me
back
know.
With open arms.
Open. Okay. And so this is a recording, or how does
Well, it's live on Facebook.
Live on Facebook right now.
Live on Facebook, yes. So I'm going to send information to you.
Okay, Esther. How do I access?
Thank you so much. I want to thank. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said you're welcome.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Bradley. Bradley, thank you for joining us today. Like and share. Bradley's from Fall River, Massachusetts. Thank you, Bradley, for joining us today as we talk about Women's International Day. This is so very important as we highlight women and recognize the women who have built our communities. I want to thank Marion Bethel for joining us, spending time with us today, taking time out from her busy schedule. And so we welcome her back into, she's our friend. We've adopted her.
Lovely.
Thank you so much. So with that, we've come to the end of our session. We want to say, can we talk? Like our page, you can comment under this video. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want us to talk about. And so with that, we've come to the end. Thank you so much. And can we talk?
All right. So enjoy the rest of the day.